Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. Just thought I'd return to you for this album review this afternoon for Stray from the Path, Clockworked, that I got a chance to listen to. I know it came out May 30th and I didn't listen to it then, but I got a chance to listen to it now to see what I was going to think of it. So I'm going to discuss what I listened to for the 10 tracks on this almost 30-minute record and let you know my thoughts on their final album, because it technically says on Wikipedia it's their final studio album. And now, after 2025, they're going to break up as a band. So let's dive into this album review. And it starts with Kubrick's Stare. Actually, a very strong track. I really enjoyed this a lot. Definitely something I can come back to. It's in your face a little, and definitely is enjoyable from Andrew's singing and screaming potential in this. So the hardcore punk stuff and metalcore stuff they go for with this is pretty strong. So it's a 5 out of 5. Fuck Them All to Hell is a strong track too. Very aggressive screams that I enjoyed from Andrew. I mean, there are times where it gets a little annoying, but it's not terrible in any way. So it's a 5 out of 5. Still a strong track. Shot Caller was really interesting with the mixing and production. Really enjoyed this one. It was a single after all, and I really enjoyed Andrew's screaming in this track and his somewhat flow of a rapping verse and all that stuff. So, pretty interesting on their part with this one. So, definitely enjoyed it. 5 out of 5. Can't Help Myself is a strong track for how it sounds. Really enjoyed the mixing on this one too. I think drum work, guitar wise, it did very well. And yeah, it's another strong track. It's a little short, but very strong in its own way. So 5 out of 5. Clockwork, the title track featuring Landmarks, is a strong track too. Really enjoyed Florent singing in this track too, along with Andrew. Did very well. Florence from the band Landmarks, just so you know. But overall, I think this track worked for how it sounded, mixing and execution wise, so another 5 out of 5. Then we get to Shocker, which is a strong track in its own way. Really enjoyed this one too. It's very in your face for sure, but enjoyable for the hardcore punk sound that they're going for with this. So, great track, definitely rocks. 5 out of 5. Bodies in the Dark featuring Poison the Well. This one was pretty good in its own way. I think Andrew's aggressive vocals sounded very strong with his screaming and singing vocals, but it's when the guy from Poison the Well comes in, it kind of sounds dull. It's not terrible, but it made me feel like I was not really enjoying it as much if he wasn't in the track. But other than that, 4.75 out of 5. Then we get to Can I Have Your Autograph, which is a strong track in its own way. I'd give this a 4.75 out of 5 for this one. I think execution-wise, both, well, both the guitar work, drum work was very strong, and just Andrew's screaming in it is pretty amazing from what I listened to. So, 4.75 out of 5. Almost a 5 out of 5, but still, it's a strong track in its own way. You're Not That Guy was kind of a solid track, but not anything that was my favorite. It's going to get a 4.5 out of 5. This one apparently kind of got a little annoying with how Andrew was singing it. It just, the repetition is what the thing is with this record. It has a lot of repetitious melodies that I can understand why they did what they did for their final record, but it did get a little repetitious and in a hit or miss kind of way. But overall, it's a solid track for how it sounds. Andrew's yelling and screaming in this was pretty solid for the most part, 4.5 out of 5. And then the closing track, A Life in Four Chapters. Pretty good song to close out the record, but definitely on the fence with me from time to time with how it's sounding, mixing wise, but it's overall strong in its own way. So I'd give this a 4.75 out of 5. So overall, production, mixing, and execution wise, I think Stray from the Path put out a pretty good record. For the most part, it is pretty strong in its own way. I mean, it's not going to be like 9 out of 10 perfect, but 9 out of 10 great or really good, but it's still a good record. I I was coming really close to giving it that rating, but as of listening to some of the tracks on here, I gotta say I'm very impressed with most of them. Like over half of the record is pretty strong, and like the last four songs are kind of hit or miss, but they're not terrible. They're still strong, but they do have their weak points. When you listen through uh, tracks 7 to 10, it's like they did all right with it, but it could have used a little more work from what I listened to. So if I were to give Stray from the Path Clockworked a score, I'm feeling an 8.5 out of 10 for this record. Very strong record. Definitely recommend you guys check this album out. And someone actually recommended me to check this album out for sure, which I'm grateful I did. I enjoyed it for the most part. It is their final record, and they're breaking up as a band, which this is going to mark 11 albums they made in their discography of music, which there'll probably be a Marathon Studio album reviews thing for them in 2026 that I'll probably do. But I got other plans for the rest of the year for albums to review. But other than that, I think Straight from the Path put out a really strong record for their final album. They went out with a bang with this record and did very well. So 8.5 out of 10 for Stray from the Path Clockwork. I hope you enjoyed this album review this afternoon, and thank you guys for watching.